Hi, it's Terry Pichot at Denver Center for Solution-Focused Brief Therapy. I wanted to talk to you a little bit about a question that I'm oftentimes asked, which is what is the difference between solution-focused brief practice and some of the other models with which it's commonly confused, such as motivational interviewing and cognitive behavioral therapy. Now, it's easy to simply say, oh, you look at the differences, and that's true, right? Because if you look at how things are similar, that's not very helpful. Things get more and more confused. What's important is to look for how something is different. So while it's true that as a solution-focused practitioner, I ask a lot of the same sounding questions as someone would ask if they're using motivational interviewing or CBT. However, how I'm thinking, my motivation behind it, the reason that I'm going after that particular question is very different than someone who is using some of these other models. So I want to talk a little bit about some research that was done that took a specific look at what is this difference between motivational interviewing, CBT, and solution-focused practice. In this research, they found that every time a client speaks, that as a professional, we are doing one of three things. We are either keeping the client's words, or we're deleting the client's words, or we're changing the client's words. And this is something we just do instinctually, right? So in motivational interviewing and CBT, they found a very consistent pattern. And what they found is that in those models, we really don't keep a large percentage of client words. But we do delete a lot, and we do change a lot. So when you think about motivational interviewing and CBT, we've all been trained a lot in paraphrasing, summarizing, because there is a belief that if you say something and then I can repeat it back to you in my own words, that is somehow evidence that I've heard you, right? Now in solution-focused practice, you actually see a very different pattern. We actually keep a large percent of clients' words. And we actually, in addition to that, delete a lot. But what we don't do is we don't change clients' words. Because we believe that by changing a client's word, it's actually putting our expertise in front of the client's expertise. Who am I to say that my word is better than yours? And by me replacing your word, it actually doesn't show that I heard you at all. Because we have to understand, people pick their exact words that they use not because of a dictionary definition, but because of a sense, an essence, a feeling that they get. Those words are very purposeful. So then the question becomes, as a solution-focused practitioner, how do we decide what words to keep versus which words to delete out? In solution-focused practice, we call these echo words. And echo words are words that are based on three things: what's important to the client, what is working, and what the client wants. Now, it's important to understand when I say what is important to the client, it's a very different definition than what a problem-focused professional would use. So for example, in problem-focused models, a person's pain, a person's problems are considered very important to them. That's not what we're talking about in solution-focused model. What we're talking about is what they value, what they want to hold on to, what they want to increase. So if a word that they use meets that criteria, we're going to keep that exact word. But if it doesn't meet that criteria, we're going to drop it out. Now, sometimes people say to me, but some of my clients, they cuss a lot and I'm not comfortable cussing that much. So it's important to understand cuss words are typically adjectives and they don't meet these criteria. So they typically will fall out of the conversation when we go with these rules. Now, there was something else that came up in this research, and that was that every single time a client speaks, they're always talking about one of three things. They're either talking about problems, or they're talking about outcome, or they're talking about process. Now, I think we all know what we're talking about when I say people talk about problems. Now, outcome is what they want, or the goal that they would like, what they're striving for. Process are the steps that they've already taken to reach that outcome, or the steps that they believe that they need to take to reach that outcome. So going back to problem-focused models such as motivational interviewing and CBT, again, we find a very consistent pattern. That if a client is talking about problems, we start asking about problems. Same thing about outcome and process. If they're asking about or talking about outcome, then we start asking about outcome. Same thing about process. Now, solution-focused practice, you see a radically different pattern. If someone is talking about problems, we actually don't ask any questions about problems. And so I put an X here, but I put a line underneath it that symbolizes, even though I don't ask about problems, I go show great compassion and empathy as my client talks about problems. It's really important to understand that I don't want to discourage them from talking about problems. That can result in a model that seems very problem-phobic and feels very disrespectful. I also don't want to do something that I see with newer practitioners, which is to rush to exception questions that are used rather randomly. So for example, if someone's talking about how horrible things are going at work and how this person is miserable and they just want to quit, I want to say, oh my gosh, I'm so sorry to hear that. And then I want to do something that I call period pause, which means after I've showed that great compassion, I really do want to just shut up and just let them talk. And what that does is it allows the person to talk more and tell me anything they want me to know about that situation without me getting involved in asking questions about it. But what I don't want to do is I don't want to say, well, was there ever a time in which you liked your job? Because what that does is it sends the message that I don't want to talk about the problem. And it's very discounting to the person. So I don't want to ask these random exceptions. Now, when a client is talking about outcome, I do ask about outcome. Or I ask about process questions. And even when they were talking about problems, at some point, they're going to pause. They're going to send a message that it's my turn to talk. And then I'm going to jump in and ask those kinds of questions. So for example, let's say that I'm talking to a kid and the kid says, I hate my mom. In problem-focused models, we would quickly ask about problem. We would say, oh my gosh, what's happening? What happened between you and your mom? In problem-focused models, this is how we show compassion. Solution-focused is very different. The kid comes in and says, I hate my mom. I'm going to show great compassion, both with my tone and my body language. And I might say, oh my gosh, I'm so sorry. And then I'm going to shut up. And that kid is going to be able to tell me more and more about anything she wants me to know about what's going on between her and her mom. But she's going to do it because she wants me to know, not because I'm asking, okay? Because we always have to remember that there's a power differential between us and our clients. And if I ask about what's happening between her and her mom, it sends a message that she needs to tell me, that that's important for me to know. When in reality, I know she doesn't have to tell me it at all. So I just give her that opportunity. And at some point she's gonna pause. She may look at me like, I've told you everything. And then I'm gonna say, so how would you rather things were between you and your mom? That's an outcome question. But do you feel how that's going to shift the conversation in a very kind and compassionate way, away from her pain, her struggle, but is going to focus it onto her good reasons for talking to me? Because in solution-focused practice, we believe that people are coming to us to talk to us about problems, not because they need to talk about problems, but because that is their way to engage us so we can help them to obtain this preferred future that they would like. Now, sometimes we've been working with somebody. Let's go back to the same child. And the child comes in and says, I hate my mom. And of course, I'm going to show great compassion and empathy, and I'm going to let her talk as much as she needs to about it. But we've already talked about how she would like things to be between her and her mom. And let's say she's involved with child welfare and she knows that they're working towards termination of parental rights, and she's not going to be able to have that life that she prefers. And so now when it's my turn to talk, I might say, so what's helping you to get through such a difficult time between you and your mom? That's a process question that's going to help her shift her attention onto coping questions, what's helping her to get through this difficult time. So what I'm talking to you about today comes from microanalysis, which really looks at what are the subtle differences between how a solution-focused practitioner responds, what words do they select when a person is talking, what words do we build upon, so we gently and purposefully direct the conversations to build in a solution-focused manner. I hope this video was helpful. If so, please like, share, help us spread the message of the work that we're doing here at Denver Center for Solution-Focused Brief Therapy. Feel free to subscribe to our YouTube channel. We will be offering more videos soon, and I hope to see you in one of our future classes.